Nina with Disney with the generic questions. Anthony, the first one's for you. What is the benefit of showcasing these characters in a 6-episode series versus a feature film?
Well, you get more time with them. I mean, if you look at it, a 6-hour series is like 3 movies. So you get the opportunity to get to really know the characters, really get invested in the characters, and really grow a relationship with the characters to carry forward.
What is compelling about the relationship between Sam and Bucky at this point after the movies that makes it worth exploring is that they are both sort of left with one another, essentially, and in a world that post Steve, and they've got to figure out what they have in common and what's different between them.
Sam's journey leading up to the series is him basically returning from the blip and coming home. The series picks up right after the blip. So you find these characters trying to reacclimate themselves into culture, into society, into the world that they once knew 5 years ago. And emotionally, Sam is very split. I mean, when we last saw him, he was left with his best friend telling him that he was no longer going to be Captain America and that he needed to, take on his moniker and move forward, which was the last thing Sam wanted. And then the overall idea of now having to be friends with Bucky is the icing on the cake that literally leaves him emotionally spent. Because Sam and Bucky's relationship kind of is tent-poled by Steve and both of their respect and admiration and love for him. So, he's kind of pulled in one direction and drawn in another. He's, 50-50 split on where exactly he is as an individual post-blip as well as an Avenger.
Bucky's journey so far can be chronicled really well in the films Winter Soldier and Civil War and the Avengers. Bucky has not been healed, and he is trying his best to get ahead of his demons and finally find his place on his own, in this life.
Well, as a black man in America, the idea of representing a country that has never stood for you, taken up for you, encouraged you, built you up, afforded you opportunity, or acknowledged what you've done since you've been here makes it very difficult to put those stars and stripes on your chest and say you're representing that country. So Sam is in a position where, how does he live with the idea of what his parents, his grandparents, his great-grandparents, his ancestors went through, and that not be changed, acknowledged, or in any way, shape, or form, any thought given by the country that he's supposed to protect and represent.
Well, Bucky's efforts to make amends are important because it means that he has to confront his actions, his past, himself, and that's the only way to move forward. And I think he's been, conveniently dodging it a little bit because there's always been a war calling him or some other effort, kind of taking him away from facing that. But now he's really in cold water, and he's got to. This is sort of the fork in the road for him. This show.
Malcolm Spellman, the writer, brought to the series a depth of a very deep level of understanding of these characters. He put us in a position where he really curated the experience for the audience, which was great. I think his life experiences, I think his background, I think his ability with exposition and not making it sound like we're telling you every week what happens really put us in a position to do the best work that we could. I mean, he's really talented when it comes to creating a character and being able to write in the voice of that character. There were certain times when we would do a rehearsal and we would send over like these ridiculous, like bunched up notes of what we wanted the scene to be. And 2 days later, we would have a great scene in the voice of the character. So he brought a level of ability that none of us could have matched in any way.
A glimpse of what it was like to work alongside Anthony, Kari, and everyone else on the set of The Falcon and Winter Soldier. Honestly, it was a lot of fun. It was a balance of trying to not laugh, because sometimes things would happen that would have us laughing forever, and then other times, you know, we need to get serious. And but it was a very collaborative experience, and at the end of the day, I think we were all happy with what we got.
Oh, the benefit of featuring these characters on Disney Plus versus a feature film is that we get to spend much more time with them. I say the feature film is like the snack, this is like the meal. So we get to get inside their lives, inside their heads. We get to go on twists and turns with them because we're not racing to the finish line. I think the complexities of Sam and Bucky's relationship that make it really worth exploring is that they're kind of two sides of the same coin, even though they seem completely like they're polar opposites. They have similar issues that they're dealing with, which is how to be relevant in a changing world. And I think these are universal issues that we all feel as well. Sam is trying to, save his family and save the family business after the blip, which has, of course, changed everything. And Bucky is trying to find his way. How is he relevant? He's 106 years old, and the world has changed, and he's having trouble fitting back in now that he has his mind back. He also is dealing with guilt issues. So the two of them are, at their core, kind of lonely. They've lost a friend. They both lost a very good friend. And so they also have common experience, which is they fought Thanos. I mean, they've experienced a world that very few have. So weirdly, they have a lot of common ground, and yet they're not really friends. So they have to figure out how to become friends if indeed that happens. Oh my goodness, Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan bring so much to these characters. They are fun to be with. They're personal friends. So of course that history and that legacy of camaraderie between them is very evident on screen. Their chemistry is fantastic. So they bring all of their senses of humor and also the gravitas, because there's plenty of times that as characters they have to be quite vulnerable. And both of them are such incredible actors. They're able to switch gears on a dime. So it's really fun to watch them. Sam's life is forever changed, obviously as a result of the blip. But his life is also changed when the shield is given to him. So by Steve. So he starts out by having to deal with not only his personal issues where the family business is failing. His sister has managed to survive during the blip while he was gone. But he's come back, and it's a changed world and a changed business, and he has to figure out what's next for his family, and also can he actually even help his family? Because that's not going to be as easy either. And there's a racial component to both what that is, alongside the shield. He's been given the shield. Well, what is it for a black man to carry that shield? What is it for him to consider the idea of Captain America? Is Captain America even relevant? So we really go on, we get inside Sam's life in a very meaningful way that makes us really understand some of who he is, and also where he lives. Bucky has come a long way. He's gotten his mind back, and as a result of that, he's lost. So on the one hand, he's we hope healed, or more or less healed. Certainly, he's grappling with the fact that he remembers everything, and he is more or less in control, or he's seemingly in control now. But that has opened up all kinds of issues, which are very, very relevant to mental health conversations. Because when you get your mind back, now you've got to deal with the guilt of what you've done. And he has to atone for, he's remembering not only what he's done, but he's looking at and experiencing some of the collateral damage, which is through the people that he's affected, his actions have affected. So we get to see how he's coping with what the ramifications, what the consequences of violence really are. And that's something that's very unusual in any entertainment where violence is part of it. We rarely sort of dig under the surface of what violence, what the consequences of violence are. So Bucky is going to have to really come to terms with how to get through, how to navigate his own demons. So this series has its own unique original stamp and signature. Yes, it fits into the MCU action look and the feel, of course, and that's just because it's that's baked into sort of the DNA of these characters. But the production design, the costuming, everything was much more grounded than it's been. We were a location show, so we really are in the places that we have visited. It's an international thriller, so we romp around the world. So we really tried to make it a little bit prettier, have its own unique signature for camera work, which I paid a lot of attention to perspective, where we were, who we were with, where we are in their brains, what the camera was capturing, and tried to make it as experiential as possible so that we really feel the perspectives of who we are rooting for in that moment.
I think the benefit of featuring these characters, all 6 of them, in a series is that we get to accelerate, we get to take people who have shined in small blips and accelerate the audience's relationship with them in a way that it took maybe 10 years of Marvel movies for you to get to know each of those Avengers in a very human way. We're doing that in 6 hours straight, and I think it's going to build a very intense bond and very intense relationship between the fans and these characters. I think the compelling thing about Sam and Bucky's relationship is that it is tethered to the most important character in the Marvel universe, right? Which is Captain America. And that relationship is now thrown into a crucible because Cap is gone. On a more profound level, as these two men who have kind of like, we've associated with each other and they've been in all kinds of battles together, and they had that iconic moment in Civil War, and they have a chemistry, more importantly, that makes fans feel like they know each other well. But with Steve gone, with Cap gone, what they're both realizing is we don't know each other well at all. We had a mutual best friend in common. In fact, I don't even know if we like each other.
And also with Cap's decision to give him a shield.
That was Sam's personal struggles just at his home life and dealing with the shield was the thing I was most excited to be to write. It just felt supremely relevant to the times where you have this black man who is dealing with the stars and stripes, and his reaction to it is appropriate for a black man, which is to push it away and have ambivalence, because that symbol without Steve does not mean the same thing to Sam, right? That symbol without Steve means oppression and adversity. And when you meet Sam at home, his roots are so deep in a black experience. He comes from a long line of black fishermen, which there's been documentaries about them and how they were treated by the banks and how society treated them. So he has an entire identity that dictates a reaction that we would have been dishonest if he had just said, oh yeah, great, I'm gonna be Cap, and not challenged it. I also think the personal story to me was exciting because it was so rooted in culture that it gives Sam a flavor that I feel like really makes him relatable to regular people. Like, you get to see him doing cooking and doing the kinds of things that real people do, and you get to see him feel uncomfortable when the police come, and we don't go crazy with it in that moment. You get to see him experience the world as a black man from the South. When the series begins, Bucky, we like to say this series began and each of the characters knocked on the door, we let them in, they walked in with their bags and put them down, right? When Bucky knocked on the door, there was a truck full of baggage. And that baggage has accumulated in all these Marvel movies and with all this Marvel mythology of a man who's been manipulated. He's 106 years old, and because he's been manipulated, he doesn't belong to any given era, least of all this era. He's killed so many people, and the fact that he remembers every one of the murders makes him believe a part of himself was the Winter Soldier. And so you take all of that and the fact that he doesn't have any family left, and the only person who ever truly accepted him for who he was, Steve, is gone. And we were like, it's such an immense thing for this kid, for this guy to tackle, that we needed to come up with a storyline that was all of that baggage concentrated into one character, that if Bucky could not find a way to make amends with him, he's going to fail as a human being. And if Bucky can find a way to be brave enough to confront this, even if the person does not accept it, he has a shot at being reborn as a human being who's not a monster and not what all that baggage says he is.
Overall strategy.
The chemistry that Sebastian and Anthony, or Sam and Bucky, have was, there's a moment everybody who's a Marvel fan remembers in Civil War, when the two of them are in the car. Can you move the seat forward? No. And in 12 seconds, everybody knew, from Kevin Feige to fans all around the world, that these two had something special. And it's crazy to think that in 12 seconds, what these two men were able to do was so electric that everybody who worked on this project knew exactly what the tone had to be, because it's just something that's sort of it's transcendent what those two guys have together, and it dictated everything moving forward. And the buddy cop, I think one of the great things about the history of sort of buddy two-handers is that buddy two-handers have a long legacy of tackling issues of the moment and doing it in a way that's still fun for the audience while being honest and not shying away from very, very relevant and sometimes hard-hitting topics. But it's always digestible because it has this, sort of electric back and forth fire and ice dynamic. When we meet John Walker, he has been the most decorated soldier maybe in U.S. history, and his expectation is that if he continues being excellent, he will inevitably become a hero like the men and women he always set his sights on. But that expectation is born from a bit of privilege and a bit of arrogance, and his journey is going to be fraught and reshape him completely by the time it's done. When we meet Sharon Carter, the funnest thing to do was to go back, watch Civil War, and imagine what this woman has had to do to survive all these years. And the Sharon Carter who walks through the door in this series is very, very different than the Sharon you saw before. She still looks super young. She still has that baby face. She still looks innocent, which makes it a little bit more striking when you start to see the edge and the habits and the attributes and the thorns she's picked up having to hustle since breaking the Sokovian Accords. And I think the best way to describe it is Sharon in this series is very, very grown up and very, very complicated. When we meet Zemo, I don't know if we can say where he's at. Well, we know where he's at literally. He's in prison. And he's been in a capsule, and he's still unsatisfied with the fact that heroes levitated his city, slammed it into his country, and killed his family and everyone else, right? And he's been unable to pursue what he believes is his life mission, which is to dispatch heroes, because in his mind, hero is the same as supremacy, and there's no room for supremacists on this planet. So Zemo would tell you, I'm the real hero in this series because I'm getting rid of the kind of people who do more damage than they do good.
It is such a privilege at this point in my career to be joining the MCU. I had no real sense, it never entered my mind that this was still a possibility for me. And so when it happened, I kind of couldn't believe my good luck. And it's been a joy to be a part of it, to be a part of the MCU, about which I really knew very little, except that everything I did was wildly popular and really beloved by critics and audiences both, and incorporated and used some of the actors that I really admired. So I am so grateful and delighted to finally be part of the MCU. I was really intrigued by this character. I've played a lot of doctors, I've played therapists, and I mostly played very no-nonsense, straightforward, very direct, people direct to a fault. So it felt very much in my wheelhouse. What I especially liked about this character as a therapist, though, was her background in the military. The fact that she was coming from a place of courage and strength, and she has the credibility of someone who has already experienced some of the sorts of things, obviously not exactly what Bucky's gone through, but some of the same losses and the same really horrific situations, and so she has a sense of what that is, and he can't say, well, you just don't know, because she does. So, in terms of being the type of person she is, forthcoming, bossy, I sort of live there. I do a fair amount of that, but having the nuance and having the sense of humor that she has, which it runs through all of the Marvel Universe shows, was really a treat for me. My character, Dr. Rayner, is assigned to work with Buckybarnes because he wants to be reintegrated into the world now that he's no longer a killing machine, the Winter Soldier that Hydra made him into. But the fact is that history is still there. He actually did commit these murders, so he needs to, and it bothers him, it deeply troubles him having done it. So she is assigned to him and the therapy is assigned as a condition of his release back into society. Because as a society, we need to feel comfortable that he's not going to go back out and start assassinating people again. So that's a pretty challenging thing to do. I think Dr. Rayner is chosen as his therapist in large part because of her own experience in the military, that she actually even served with John Walker. So she understands PTSD. She understands the trauma of having to kill people, and how that reverberates for a person. And she's really strong and very direct. And as he tells her she's a terrible therapist, and she says, well, maybe, but I was a great soldier. And she's, it's like, whatever. Yeah, but I know what I'm talking about. Probably the most fun that we had, and I think that's clear to the audience, was in episode 2 when I instruct the boys to sit and face each other and look each other in the eye and sit closer to each other. And while that was written in the script, the fact is, when you've got you've got Anthony and you've got Sebastian, these guys who have been working together all this time as actors, and you put them together and you ask them to do physical comedy and be that close together, you just kind of, you sit back when you're a brilliant director and you just let it happen. And for me, I was in the perfect position as Dr. Rayner because I literally was the audience to it. And then I just had to figure out at what point, as Amy, I had to figure out at what point do I stop this as Dr. Rayner, because we were all having way too much fun watching it. The universe, so to speak, of entertainment has changed so just obviously dramatically just over the course of my career, which, started 35 years ago. And I remember people saying there's nothing good on television, and now it's like, no, you don't understand. The filmmakers, the writers, the directors, the actors, the craftspeople, the designers that worked in film now want to work in television, we'll call it television, streaming, whatever, because rather than being forced to tell a story in 2 hours, which is what a movie is that you see in a movie theater, they have 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours to tell that story. Who would not want to have that kind of freedom? You can go so much deeper. Wait, so when you step back and think about it, it's a very arbitrary thing. The reason we came up with you have 2 hours to tell this story is because you just can't expect a whole theater full of people to sit still for much more than 2 hours. Someone's going to have to go to the bathroom, etc. Which is why we try to jam that storytelling all into 2 hours. Well, now you have exactly the same resources, but applying them to now a 6-hour movie, an 8-hour movie, a 10-hour movie. And, this is a 6-hour movie. And I would talk about when I was doing Bosch on that other streaming service, I said, we're doing a 10-hour movie. That's what it is. It's all the same standards. It's all the same people. We're just telling the story in 10 hours. Why would you not want to be able to have that extra time, in this case, with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, to have 6 hours to tell that story instead of limiting yourself to 2?
It's such a surreal feeling being a part of the MCU. I don't feel like it's sunk in just yet. I don't know when it will sink in, but it's incredible. I feel so lucky to be a part of it, and it's been such a fun time as well. I think what I found appealing about playing Carly was that there's lots of layers to her, and she's not one-dimensional, and I was excited to pick her apart and understand her more. So Carly is an extremely determined and driven, passionate young woman, which I had the pleasure of playing. And during the blip, I think she was realizing that people had started to unite and come together a little bit more and work more as a unit rather than separately. And I think that's what she's trying to get back to. I think Carly is fighting for equality, and she wants the world to go back to the way it was during the blip. I think the way that she's being towards Bucky and Sam is probably where the antagonist side of it comes into it, but the root of her and her drive, I think, is people will see a hero there, or they will understand that Carly thinks that she's a hero. Yeah. I prepared by working out a lot. They had me training in England before I'd even left, and then when I got to the States, I'd spent the first few weeks training before any rehearsals or shooting anything. I was just training really hard with my stunt double. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest prep that I had to do. I think it's made obvious by the fact that Carly will only use muscle when she needs to, and it's more of just a useful thing. She has this strength and she uses it to carry big boxes of essential items to people that need it, and I think that's where it kind of stemmed from. And then now she's getting out there a little bit more and people are starting to notice her and try and stop her and fight back. She's able to then use muscle to defend herself. A typical day. It was just fun. I just feel like it didn't even feel like work every day. It was just fun. Anthony was always joking around and laughing, and so that was a lot of fun. And then, Kari would be trying to get things sorted and bring it back down and say, okay, let's crack on. But yeah, I think all in all, it was just a lot of fun. I had such a great experience. I think it's better that you get 6 episodes because it just feels like 6 mini movies. It doesn't feel like a series. It's shot like a movie and it flows like a movie and it just goes on for like 4 hours longer than a movie.
Joining the MCU it's always an honor to be asked to join it. I was trepidatious about doing it, as any big decision is. I didn't know whether or not I could deliver what they were hoping I could. It was a bit of a decision, and they were able to sort of, convince me that I was what they wanted. What drew me to the character most was his polarizing character, was the polarization. He's a bit of a troubled guy, and troubled for reasons that I think people will end up going, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. So I hope that's the way people feel when they get to that, some of those parts, some of those aspects of the character. The shield was difficult to learn how to use because it's awkward, it's heavy. Justin Eaton, who's my stunt performer, he's my stunt double. We spent a lot of time doing what he would call shield work, and being able to throw the shield, use the shield as a tool. The stunt team is unbelievable at, and very experienced using it, doing this stuff. So I learned a lot from them. We spent quite a bit of time actually on me learning how to use the shield, throw it, and all that kind of fun stuff that was more difficult than I thought. It's heavier than I thought it was going to be. It's more cumbersome than I thought it was going to be. And to do some of the stuff that they needed to be done, it did take a lot of practice. So I was grateful for those guys. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been seeing a very exciting version of Captain America. It was really fun. A typical day on set with Kari, Sebastian, Anthony, the crew. It was fun. It was sometimes the experience of bigger things can be a bit laborious just because they're big, but with the people that you're working with, it really does make all the difference. Sebastian and Anthony are two of the nicest, greatest people. They're so much fun. They keep it so much fun. Anthony has the best sense of humor. Sebastian has the best sense of humor. They're just wonderful to work with. So on that front, it was easy. On the other fronts, it was sometimes difficult because I have questions, they have questions. They need to figure things out that weren't always have stock answers to them. You want to figure out the best way that you possibly can so that everybody can get the most out of the project. Kari and Zoe were so amazing at being open to the ideas, being open to things that weren't necessarily the direction that it may have seemed to start off with, and being okay with changing that but keeping it within their vision of what they wanted the show to be. They were very special that way, in my opinion, and I felt really lucky to work with them and the crew. The crews are all great. The crews are all absolutely top notch, and you can't ask for.
Well, it feels fantastic if you get the call and you're invited to revisit something. And especially when you're given the opportunity to do something different with it. And and to explore, aspects and sides of your character that you were not able to, play with the first time around. So the feeling of evolving, and the feeling of not repeating yourself but doing something very different is highly inspiring and thrilling. Where do we find Zemo? Well, he's sitting in a German prison cell, and he's been sitting there for quite a while, for a couple of years. He's probably, thinking of a way to get out, to break out of prison. And I guess he wouldn't have expected Bucky to show up and giving him the opportunity to do so. We meet Zemo, and we hopefully remember him from Civil War. So we still, understand what he's haunted by and traumatized by, and it includes still that he, has the clear mission for him to avoid for anyone to get hold of, a serum that could allow you to have superpowers, because he has experienced what can happen if that ends up being in the wrong hands. So this is his mission. And the interesting thing about the show is that these three are thrown into a situation in which they have to collaborate, so they couldn't be more different, but still this triangle has to accomplish that mission, and each one does it out of a very individual motivation. And yeah, the fun about this show in particular for me was, to have these scenes with the two of them, to have that awkward trio, who again couldn't be more different, but still have to work together. We finally get to see Zemo's background in the show and understand that he's a baron, and that he's royalty. His family was, and that was so much fun to play with. We see a different attitude in Zemo. We see a different style. This wonderful coat he's wearing, and I remember that when I put this coat on, I immediately changed the way I played Zemo. It gave me the opportunity to play around with this aristocratic background, to be more suave and posh and arrogant and comical and whatnot. So this was a new side to Zemo that we didn't get to see in Civil War. The relationship between these three, and the relationship between Zemo and Bucky and Sam, is highly complicated, as you can imagine. But the three depend on each other, and the three need each other. So no matter how creepy and manipulative Zemo might be, Bucky and Sam know exactly that they need him, at least for a certain amount of time. And what I always loved in those scenes is that no matter how different they are, and the conflicts and arguments they might have with each other, I guess underneath it all there is I don't know if respect, but understanding for each one's trauma in life, and I guess they see that in each other. Every one of them has gone through a lot in life. The two of them having lost their allies and friends, their best friend they looked up to. Zemo has lost his family, so I think there's that mutual understanding of, you know, what everybody has gone through. Well, Zemo is shocked by the information that there are more super soldiers and that there is, you know, that highly dangerous super soldier serum, because, you know, this is, for Zemo, this is his ultimate nightmare. He has seen what happens when people play God. And the catastrophe of his life, the loss of his home, the loss of his family, is due to that, and that is why he tries to do everything he can to get hold of that serum and to fight super soldiers, because according to Zemo, they're not allowed to exist. A typical day on the Falcon and Winter Soldier consisted of cracking up, laughing multiple times because of, you know, Anthony Mackie's jokes. He is hilarious, and it is, but sometimes it's tough to work with him because you're still thinking of a joke that he made, and then you realize that the camera is rolling. But that helped to create that wonderful, cheerful, playful atmosphere that Marvel always creates, and surprises me, and I find that incredible, because if you think about the endeavor, if you think about how big that scale is and how much pressure there is on projects like those, which are gigantic, it is really remarkable of how smooth and nice and welcoming it feels when you are on set. And that allows you to be loose and to, you know, to try things, to, you know, to enjoy it. And so everybody who is chosen, like Harry, the director, you know, are wonderful people. So, and if you're surrounded by the best people, then you're able to shine. And so I really enjoyed every single day on it. I have to say, yeah.
How do I feel about returning to the MCU? I feel great about it. I mean, I love working with Marvel. I love Sharon Carter, and so coming back to play her has been amazing, especially getting to play this new version of Sharon, who I think is just awesome and kind of, you know, cynical, rough around the edges. Yeah, it was cool that we actually get to see where she's been, what she's been up to, and, you know, always a blast to come back. With Sharon, I think, you know, we initially meet Sharon as this, you know, wide-eyed, extremely loyal to Cap, you know, young agent who's, you know, full of integrity. I mean, that's sort of who she was in the comic books, and it was really fun to play that. And then I think, you know, with all of the sacrifices that we see that she makes in Civil War, she has to go on the run, and then suddenly we just don't see her for several years. I don't think there was any way around it but to really address the situation head on, and here we find her in Madripoor, and she's still a fugitive. She's, you know, been hustling, you know, dealing art, you know, stolen art in this sort of pirate-like town, and you know, it's just a very different version of Sharon than we've seen, and rightfully so. And for me, it was a lot of fun to play that, and, you know, I just really am glad that we got to explore that side of her, and that we didn't just sort of bring her back and everything's just like back to normal, because there's just no way that you can't address all of that time. So yeah, I loved playing this version of Sharon. It was very intense to prepare for these fight sequences, only because I was shooting 2 projects at the same time, and with anything, for me anyway, I have to do it, at 1,000%. And so when I wasn't shooting, I was, stunt training as much as I possibly could. Also because, with these sequences with Sharon, she doesn't have any powers. It's all, me fighting essentially, and so we spent a lot of time, months, preparing and just figuring out what Sharon's fight style would be in this world of Madripoor, but also having had this technical, agent background and training in that sense. So it was just very, very cool to explore that, and the training was hard, but it's always rewarding, when you put the time into something like that. Madripoor is probably a good metaphor for her state of mind. I mean, you get there and it's chaos, and it's it's lawless, and it's so much fun, and our set designers did such an incredible job, making this world just seem so, out there. And the fact that Sharon has been existing within this world for quite a while, and she's thriving, really. I mean, it shows that, she can kind of sort herself out wherever she is, in whatever circumstance she's in. Does that mean that she's happy with it? No. And I think you get that sense when she sees the boys for the first time. I mean, she's quite annoyed, and very, very pissed off, and rightfully so, but they're also kind of her ticket out and to that pardon that she so badly wants. So I think Madripoor is the perfect place to find Sharon after all this time. I mean, it's just, I love working with these guys so much, and Kari is just an amazing director, and to be honest, it was very nice to also just have some female energy as well on the set. But mostly it was interesting because because we were working through this new version of who Sharon is and what she's been up to and all that stuff. Kari was just great at helping sort of figure that out with me, and then with the boys, it's just always fun, always jokes, always laughing, and it's a lot of night shoots and a lot of difficult circumstances on set at times, very fast paced, and so it's great to have that initial relationship with them, having known them for a while, and then also just laughing. I mean, that's pretty much all we do when we're not shooting, so it was a lot of fun. The benefit of Disney Plus and having this streaming platform in the Marvel Universe, I think, is just the value of time. Having extra time with these characters is so wonderful for people who are fans of the films and fans of these characters. Sharon is a perfect example of trying to figure out how to slot her into these movies, but when you're trying to service so many characters, it's difficult, and it makes total sense. You have such a limited amount of time to tell the story, and here within this platform, you really get to dig a little bit deeper into the characters. And I think that for people who love these movies, the shows are going to be really exciting.
What was appealing about playing the character of Sarah Wilson is getting an opportunity to speak on some really important and pertinent issues that are happening in this country today to many people in such a personal, grounded, authentic way. Sarah Wilson's backstory: she's in Louisiana with her 2 children, and she's running the family business. During the blip, obviously her brother disappears, and she has to figure things out on her own, on top of everything that's happening as a result of the blip, and trying her best to keep things afloat. I think in conflict with wanting to keep the legacy going, but at a certain point, you get at your ropes end, and struggling and just trying her best day to day with that, like many people have done and are doing now. And I think that's what's really appealing about the character of Sarah, and that I think feels really real to many people. Sarah and Sam's relationship, it's kind of like what is beautiful about having family members who will tell you the truth and will give you the truth, their truth, and in their truth and your own truth, and how sometimes that's conflicting. So there can be a little bit of tension, but there's love. It's steeped in love. So no matter what happens, love is at the bottom of it. And Sarah to Sam she's also the person's like, no matter how, like literally how high you can fly, it's like she's the person like your family should be and can be, to like bring him back down to his roots, bring him back down to his foundation, because again, it's that idea of remember where you come from and of whom you're from. And so she's a literal representation, a reminder of that, I feel like, to Sam. It's a typical day to day, just showing up on set and just being greeted with smiles and just beautiful energy, like truly, like everybody on set, no matter what the position was, it's just beautiful energy. And and the ability to, again, working with someone like Anthony, he's so generous. And so if we're needing to like go through lines, talk through things, we're doing that, and as well as like just sharing stories, learning more about each other, and then with Kari, it's just her really being able to just talk to you about the specifics of the situation, of the character, of the scene, and then just digging deeper. The benefit of having 6-episode series, telling a story like this, as opposed to a feature film, is really getting to deep dive into the story in ways, obviously, because we have more time. Deep dive into the storytelling, into the character, into characters, into the background. So it's just rooted in humanness. Because we will show up, and we all show up for just the for the action, for the for all of that, but getting to explore the other side of that, the different facets of what does it mean to be a human being who's extraordinary in many ways. It just grounds everything in reality.
Sam taking up the shield was a difficult process for many different reasons. One, he never really felt comfortable with the idea of becoming Captain America after Steve Rogers. That was Steve Rogers' moniker. That was Steve Rogers' job. And, he didn't get into this to take over for Steve Rogers. And also, the idea of being a black man in America and fighting for a symbol that has never fought for you is a very harsh reality to come to grips with. So it was in no way, shape, or form easy for him to do. And we see it perfectly executed with the introduction of Isaiah Bradley, the relationship that Isaiah Bradley has had with the Shield and the country, and the lack of appreciation and support and acknowledgement that he's received kind of fed perfectly into the reluctancy that Sam had with becoming Captain America. It's not a beautiful relationship between the history of America and black men in America. But at the same time, realizing that, Sam wanted to utilize that to be a character of a conduit of change. Because the great thing with Sam is he's not a superhero. He doesn't have superpowers. He doesn't have a super suit. He's just a guy who went for a jog and became Captain America. So, it was very important for him realizing, the Isaiah Bradleys of the world need representation too. And there is no greater way to do that, to heal that open wound between black men and America, than by him coming becoming Captain America? Well, Sam Wilson's Captain America is very different than Steve Rogers, just simply because, you know, there is no super soldier serum. There is no super suit. There are no superpowers. You know, he's starting off in the Winter Soldier. Sam started off as a counselor of military vets. He started off as just a regular guy who bumped into Captain America. So for him to take on, you know, the idea of becoming Captain America, you have to realize now that Captain America is now a more a less of a aggressor. You know, in the former 20 Marvel movies, they all ended with somebody getting blown up or something getting destroyed and blown up. And if you watch The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Sam's ultimate goal was to talk Carly and the Flag Smashers off the ledge of what they were trying to do. It was very important for him to realize that what they were doing was correct. The way in which they were going about it was wrong, and he didn't want to do that with physical force. That's why the end of the show, episode 6, was so important, because all she knew with the super soldier serum was physical force. All she knew was brute force. And he's more of a compassionate, more of an understanding, introspective superhero, because he doesn't have superpowers. All he has is himself and his belief that we can do better. Sam and Bucky's relationship evolved in a great way, because they went from, you know, having a lack of any type of relationship to truly becoming friends and really co-stars. I mean, Sam and Bucky were able to utilize their relationship with Steve Rogers and Steve no longer being around to kind of galvanize their relationship as friends. So you see them go through this amazing arc of not wanting to be around each other to not being able to do without each other. The themes of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier are very timely in many different ways. If you look at the show basically picks up post-blip. Everyone's coming back and trying to figure out what their new normal is. How do they fit back into society? If you look at it in reality, we're almost in a post-COVID society where we're looking for our new normal, and how we're going to fit back into our new reality is as post-COVID citizens of an affected planet. You know, where exactly does that leave us? And also, you know, the idea of the relationship of America and African Americans has in the past year and a half reared its ugly head again, and for many different ways, many different reasons. And you know, if you look at our show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's very important and timely because you bring up those exact same issues, just in a different scope and scale. The Flag Smashers literally want equality for all people. The Flag Smashers literally want everyone to have the same opportunities and treatment, and not just a selected few. And that's kind of what the young generation is asking for, has always asked for in American culture. The younger African American generation is asking for in American culture today. The fan response has been amazing. You know, it's just being here in New Orleans, the reaction from all the people I know here, from the places I go, the people I see, everyone's really in awe, really proud of the fact that, you know, I was able to work my way up to becoming Captain America. It's funny, you know, so many people, they don't know what to say about it or how to react to it. I don't even know exactly how to react to it yet, but you know, people are really excited to see where the character's going, because it's such a departure from where the characters and where we as a country have come from.
You know, the fan response to the series has been absolutely thrilling because they're so engaged in the conversation. This is really important to all the deep themes that we have been exploring within this particular storyline of the first Black Captain America. So it's been a wonderful ride to watch, particularly as each week rolls out, and we send them thinking one thing, and then the twists and turns of the series and the characters has been lots of fun because there's a boatload of water cooler conversation, which is what we intended. So I'm thrilled at how it's landing. Sam Wilson's internal journey starts when he gives up the shield. So he says this shield is, belongs to that man. And what he's really saying is it belongs to the past. It's not as relevant now. We need new heroes. We need new icons, symbols, and this was a great symbol, one of the greatest, but it belongs to a different time. So his journey starts there, and then he realizes once it's picked up again, and his trust was broken because he gave it to be locked up, and then they brought it out, they dusted it off and handed it to John Walker. He realizes there that he has been betrayed. He still doesn't go after the shield. He continues on his own journey, but as he does, and the world changes, and he is Falcon, who he's quite satisfied being Falcon, he realizes that somebody is going to have to, and I think it's not until John uses the shield as an instrument of death, and it's now a weapon of a different kind, that he realizes it has got to be taken out of his hands. Now the shield means something different to everybody, so his internal journey is very much the Isaiah Bradley connection is very much a part of how he's having to deal, because not only is he having to cope with his family life, which is not perfect, he's blipped back and he's stunned by the changes and is trying to find his own relevance within this new world, and he's also trying to help his family, which he's a bit powerless to do. So he's struggling on that side. He's in trying to find his relevance. He discovers there's this super soldier, a black super soldier, and he tries to go down that road with Isaiah, and Isaiah shuts it off and closes that door. And that vitriol, that when I think is one of the most important moments of the show, when Isaiah says no self-respecting black man would pick up that shield, and so his community is not going to support it. And in his final speech, when he did decide to pick up the shield, he decided after his conversations with his sister and with Bucky that he in fact is the one, because it has the makeup of a person, is the new hero, we went on a big exploration of what a hero is, and he has the makeup of what it is to be a hero and carry the shield without it ever being used as a weapon of any kind of destruction. So that's why he picks it up. And you'll notice even at the end, he tries not to fight with Carly. It was really important to me that whole fight sequence was about him refusing to fight her. He's still right to the end, wants to harness her energy and diffuse the radicalism that she has inspired, not to feed into it. And ultimately he is successful. Sadly, she dies, and he would have preferred that not to happen, obviously. But when she says, "I'm sorry," he realizes, and she realizes, he was right, and that he realizes that he was right in believing in her. So right up to the end, and then he, even with the mantle, wearing the suit, he still says to those in charge, "You will have to decide what you're going to do with your power. You can do better. Think about how this is going to land." Well, that's a new Cap. That's a Cap who is now coming from a place of an earnest desire for change. So these were all of the character stories that he had to reconcile and sort of grow into. When Bucky starts out, he has to evolve from being a man who is incredibly uncomfortable in his own skin, who does not know how to go forward. He has lost his way. He's found himself, he's found his brain, but like he says to his psychiatrist, she says, "You're free." And he says, "To do what?" So he has to find his way now. He's lost. And he sort of hangs on to Sam because they have a common friend, they have a common bond, which is through Cap. But they don't know each other particularly, and they don't even like each other particularly. So he kind of jumps onto Sam's coattails. And really he's searching not only for his own relevance, but he has seen what happened to the Shield. And he's got that connection to Cap, as he says later in episode 5, that Shield represented to me a connection to my past. And as we go through the story, of course, the Shield represents something different to everybody. So he can't date properly. He's got to reconcile the guilt that he's feeling. He's trying to make amends, but it's not satisfying for anybody involved. And it's not until he talks to Sam, who says, "You actually are coming at this from the wrong place. You're thinking it's about you, and it's not. It's about them." And once he gets to that recognition that he can acknowledge his guilt, that frees him. So he's not trying to run from his guilt of his heinous acts. He's trying to acknowledge and move on. And that's his game changer. Over the course of this series, Sam and Bucky's relationship changes from being one of caustic tolerance of each other, their only bond being Cap, because they didn't really know or like each other. I mean, they have no real point of reference other than Cap. And they're kind of connected by missing him. They miss their best friend, both of them, equally. But they also kind of don't like each other. So they go from just tolerating each other's presence. And I think Sam tolerates Bucky because he might need the muscle of it, particularly when he starts suspecting super soldiers are in there. So he sort of tolerates them. And then they go through a breakup. And I think they even say it in episode 2, where they say, "Okay, let's agree to agree that we'll just do this thing, this important thing, and then we'll never have to see each other again." So they kind of break up. And then they go on this adventure together. And they discover, and oh, by the way, in episode 2, even their fighting style, they're fighting together, they're not working like a well-oiled machine. And then in comes Lamar and the new Captain America into that fight sequence. And oh my God, they're working together like they don't beat them, but they absolutely work as a unified force. Whereas Sam and Bucky are just helter-skelter with it all. They completely are pulling it off. So then toward the end, by the top of episode 5, not only have they a common goal in retrieving this shield from John Walker, who simply cannot go forward in their minds with the shield, and rightly so, after John has used the shield as a weapon in horrendous fashion and put blood on it in a way that it should never have had. So their mutual respect for this iconic symbol bonds them in a final huge effort of really syncopated. They are together in their struggle against John. They fight well together. Everything about what they do is coordinated. So they have not only become friends through the shield tossing moment where they're kind of tossing the shield like it's a football, and Bucky admits that he underestimated what it was for he and Cap to have. They just never knew what that conversation was. How could they? They're white guys. For Sam to take up the shield, and he apologizes to him. And that's where they kiss and make up, and they really become friends. And he helps him with the boat, and we get a sort of a sense of the camaraderie, and then it manifests in episode 5 as they work like a really well-oiled machine together. Their fighting styles and everything works together. So we really calibrated the ebbs and flow of their relationship, making sure that at the end, and we take it all to the very end, the last shot between them, where they're standing together kind of looking at the future, and they literally walk off into the sunset, and that was very satisfying. I think my instinct and some of my past work has really been involved in the emotional storylines of the characters I work with, which I wanted to bring to this because at its core, this had lots of plot, but it was going to be the emotional journeys of our characters, which were this made so much more poignant by the conversations we were having. We were talking about big themes: elitism, imperialism, racism, justice, heroes. So these are big, meaty topics, but can be mired in plot. So the only way in was through the emotional storyline of these characters, who I felt not only had a three-dimensional life, but we had the time to go there. So in a 6-hour movie, we are able to dig into things like the bank scene and see how powerless in his personal life Sam really is, and what is that doing to him as a man, he's blipped back and he's trying to help his sister, who says, "I don't need your help," and kind of, "Don't come back and tell me what to do." So he's rendered kind of useless in his personal life, and so he's got to find a way back in there. But that's a really strong emotional journey to take. So what I love about when you get into inside characters that way, that informs you of every other one of their movements, including all the action sequences. So we know in each action sequence where our characters are standing emotionally, and they can bring that to the sequence, which makes us just care more about every part of what goes down, what happens to them. So I'd like to think that it's that work, that heavy lifting, which, oh, by the way, the actors were very much a part of. I think every one of them was super aware of their emotional journey. John Walker's emotional journey was supercharged. He was, very much a part of thoughtfully going through each one of the scenes and making sure that we were on track, or that we shot alternatives if we weren't sure, to calibrate his character, so that by the time we did that speech in the when they're stripping him of his stripes, that he really knew his emotional place in it all. And as he says, "You built me, and now you're abandoning me." Well, wow, that's a wonderful arc for that character, who then just falls, through the cracks in that moment. So I'd like to think that it was that work that really helped give each one of our characters such amazing performance potential.
Sam Wilson's internal journey to becoming Captain America is rooted in sort of doubt and ambivalence, and it hits from a few layers, right? The most obvious one is, can you do the job? Following Steve Rogers and the giant imprint he has in the MCU, right? It'd be like showing up to the Chicago Bulls after Jordan left, right? And that's the most obvious, easy one. But then there is his identity and his experience as a black man, particularly a black man from the South. And he feels beholden to his community. He knows that just the act of donning the stars and stripes is a statement that is going to be rife with conflict for his people because of our relationship with this country and with the history there. And so he doesn't even know, honestly, if it's appropriate for him to do. You know what I'm saying? As we send him on this journey, we wanted, one of the things we loved about Isaiah is the living embodiment of Sam's doubt. And it's funny that the book and the episode is truth, because we never wanted Isaiah to be wrong in anything he said, which would make Sam's journey even more difficult. We wanted Sam to, when he becomes Cap, to do it instead of doing the traditional hero's journey where your hero overcomes his fears and slays them and slays the dragon. We wanted Sam to merely confront his fears, find out that they're true, and then still decide to become Cap in the face of that, in hopes that maybe they won't be true for someone after him. So again, it's a very, very hard choice for him to make. And I don't know that if you listen to Sam's speech at the end, I don't know that he is at all sure if people will ever embrace him, or even if it was the right choice. Bucky's evolution from when he enters this series to the end, I just thought was, man, his fans have been really, really awesome about embracing it. Bucky has accumulated so much baggage during his history in the MCU, and including what he did to Stark's family, you know what I'm saying? And he's had human moments where people have tried to tell him it's going to be okay, but we knew with him walking into this series that his experience and the fact that not only has he done all this awful stuff, but he's also never had solid footing in any era, being 106 years old, I think, right? We wanted him to come in as a man who is overshadowed by an identity that was, nearly 100 years in the making, an awful one, right? To be aware that a part of himself was alive in every one of those murders, which means maybe some of the Winter Soldier is naturally in him. It's the first thing Zemo says. To take all of that, distill it into a single character that he has to make amends with, so that by the time Bucky emerges, he is in a position to be a hero and a human being for the first time. And I think there's a subtle moment that maybe the fans haven't picked up on, but in that episode 6, when Bucky frees those people from the van, I can't confirm whether or not that's the first time he was ever treated like a hero. And us writing for this character, that was a momentous moment for us as writers, meaning that was Bucky's real first hero moment. He's been set free as far as the world's perception, and he has that moment that makes him believe he can be a hero and helps him, in his journey to make amends. Sam and Bucky's relationship really evolves from an assumption that is born from chemistry between the actors to a genuine brotherhood, right? And they become family. So when we first meet Sam and Bucky, in a weird way, the characters know the same thing as the actors know the same thing as the writers and Kevin Feige and the fans, which is they have this natural chemistry. And they also had a mutual best friend in common. And so I think there's a comfort that they initially had with each other that was not earned, because they wasn't really friends. They just had a mutual best friend in common. He has now been removed, and the embodiment of that friend still lives there and forces them to confront not only the loss of Steve, but whether or not they were ever meant to be friends. They go on this journey, they deal with the loss of Steve, they deal with the fact that, Steve's mantle has ended up in the wrong hands. And in going through all that, there's just that in episode 5, there's that connection made where Bucky, who's been going on his own personal journey, is starting to become somebody who can really let people into his life for the first time in a meaningful way. Bucky don't have no family. He's outlived everybody, right? And so I think, by the end of the journey, the chemistry that they had and the assumption that they were friends is exploded and then rebuilt with them, familial connection between them. And as they say on the internet, Bucky has been invited to the barbecue, literally. People regularly ask how we were able to tackle issues, themes, ideas that feel very, very relevant. And I'm not going to do false humility. Our writer's room was dialed in on everything. A huge part of it is, I think Black folk have been predominant in pop culture for a long time now, and I think that is because our struggle is basically an intensified version of just the human struggle in general. And I think that there's just an assumption that people around the planet have that they can connect with us because we just, there's an openness to our pain and our triumphs. And so coming into the writer's room, we, you know what I'm saying, and me included, we're very aware that there's a new climate that has emerged around the planet, and it's not about one thing. And in fact, so that this answer doesn't become too political, I'll use the word climate as an example. Sure, climate change has been a gradual issue, but climate change is now reaching peak mass, right? And in that is something people from Africa, China, you know, Bulgaria, whatever, all have in common. Well, just magnify that to a broader human struggle and a broader sense of powerlessness from people, and just sort of like just all these universal issues now emerging. And the room was dialed in, and I think a big part of that is by having diversity in that writer's room, it allowed a point of view to be heard that has the connectiveness that's always existed with us, meaning Black folk and pop culture. Meaning when we're at the helm, we will reach out to everybody, and that's why our music and our sports and our dance and our dress is so embraced. Sam's final speech in this episode, to me, was our chance to show his real superpower. Just sort of repeat something I said, if African American struggle in this country is sort of the concentrated version of a universal human struggle, right? Then that means in a world and a time when everybody feels like they're struggling, even people in rich countries, Sam as a Black man and as a Black man as Captain America has a universal shorthand with people. If you're struggling, a Black person is going to have a shorthand with you to converse with that struggle. And that humanity and that openness was a chance for him to display his superpower, which is, you know, I don't have the answers and I don't have super serum in me. What I have is the belief that we can do better. And to have the belief that you can do better, you also have to have the empathy to be able to look at anyone, despite gender, identity, race, religion, and honestly be able to feel their individual struggle. And Sam's speech sort of got to that. It also got to something I think that was made the Flag Smashers such compelling, you know, antagonists. I don't even want to call them villains, which is his awareness in what they were fighting, which is fighting against, which is this feeling of powerlessness and this feeling of human beings that now kind of have the power of Thanos. You know what I'm saying? These billionaires who have these global companies and these governments and these giant, you know, organizations that are, or when I say giant, the reach is giant and powerful. They're making people all over the planet feel powerless. And Sam got to bring that to a head in the speech.